It's October the 22nd. Welcome to Canada, Ontario. My name is Lasha Rochenko. The channel is called High Voltage. If you want to listen to Ask Not, then you've reached one of the many cyberspace places you can find it. And I'm way behind everybody else. Ready? So for those of you who have been following with me, I put these pages, page 122, 123, 124, and 126, I put on the community page in case you want to follow along. Okay, so we're still on Mary Jo. Like Ted Blondes was, for me, a long chapter. It was a really long chapter. It should be, because Mary Jo Kopechne, he got away with... How come the Menendez brothers are still in jail when what they did was horrible? But back in those days, people didn't talk about male SA, right? And why couldn't they find one witness to back up that whatever his name, the father Hernandez was a psychopath? Well, actually, people testified about that, but nobody could find any positive witnesses. Oh, but Ted got away with it because he's a Kennedy. Although if you watch the Netflix series, the Menendez brothers, they wanted to be president too, to carry out his father's legacy. And these boys were 18 and 22. That's young. Wow. Okay, and they're still in jail. At any rate, this is about Ted's testimony. I intended to call for assistance and report the accident to police within a few short moments of going back into the car. Did something happen to transpire to prevent this? Like, could have something happened to transpire to prevent this? Question mark. Ted dodged the question. Of course he did. He's a politician. Instead, he became most talkative about his own physical pain, self-pity, feet, and a childlike belief that the whole problem, Mary Jo's death, and his responsibility for it, would just go away. Just go away. He was afraid. He was so scared. But he's not English. I wish I could do a scared Boston accent. Boston. So Mary Jo's death and his responsibility for it would just go away. He was afraid, he said, to call Mary Jo's mother. I just couldn't gain the strength within me, the moral strength to call Mrs. Kopechne at 2 o'clock in the morning and tell her that her daughter was dead. Isn't that horrible? Instead, he called Helga Wagner. Then he went back to his room at the inn, and despite seen by multiple witnesses at breakfast the next morning, freshly showered and shaved, neatly dressed, composed with a healthy appetite, Ted insisted he had not slept the night before, tossing and turning and panicking and overwhelmed by the tragedy of the loss of that girl. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, Bobby's widow, Ethel, deputized to call Mary Jo's parents. Ethel told them, as a recent widow and fellow Catholic who had welcomed Mary Jo into her and Bobby's home many times, and that she knew the loss, that her faith was a comfort, and that the rest assured the Kennedys would be attending Mary Jo's funeral. Those twisted people. In the front, pew sat Ted. And remember, he had that thing around his neck and he jerked around to look at everybody? What an idiot. Well, that's what it talks about. No other media outlet picked up an explosive report in the Washington Post by Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, fresh out of Watergate, that the surviving Boiler Room girls may have been targets of blackmail, possibly by Ted's enemies. The expose focused on a New York City apartment by a former White House secret investigator named Anthony T. Alswitz, which he claimed was for establishing a private, decorative office to conduct confidential investigations. However, the article read, sources said that the apartment was furnished with velvet wallpaper and fur rugs. Oh my stars. Government attorneys have been told that the apartment was to be used to seduce female friends of late Mary Jo Kopechne. The scheme involved hiring good-looking men. What? The scheme involved hiring a good-looking man to seduce the woman in the apartment, have pictures taken secretly, and then blackmail the woman into revealing details about Miss Kopechne and the party that took place shortly before the Chappaquiddick accident. What, if anything, resulted from that scheme remains unknown. Sound familiar? For their silence, the Boiler Room girls were rewarded with Ted Kennedy's contempt. Years later, Mary Jo's roommate, fellow Boiler Room girl, Neonce Lyons, said Ted never spoke to her professionally because she was a girl, and once claimed that it was Nance, not Ted, who wanted to say Mary Jo was driving the car. Who's Nance? I can't remember. Not that any of it mattered. Ted had been protected from the beginning. The judge presiding over Ted's hearing, in which he pled guilty to leaving the scene of an accident, was a longtime Kennedy family friend. Ted's crisis managers had all the worked and written speeches for Jack and Bobby. What had Mary Jo been doing with Senior Ted Kennedy that night? The obvious answer was they were playing around in the weeds. Olson said. She's had a few drinks. She's very giddy and excited. She's with a Kennedy, a lifelong dream. He's probably been loving her up like a little. Olson continued. Just to be in the car with him in the middle of the night on a deserted island, she must have been beside herself with excitement. A spinster girl. What was she? 28? Mary Jo had been a week away from turning 29. In the Kennedy version, Mary Jo, a temptress, a seductress, a slut, and a groupie. In all likelihood, she died a virgin. And that's the end of 124. Tomorrow, I'm starting what is this? Joan Bennett Kennedy. I have no idea who that is. I'm reading it with you. Sayonara. I hope you enjoyed that little piece. Bye.